Today we have with us Jason Turner, co-founder at ID Lab Global. Jason, so excited to have you and thank you for hosting us at your beautiful house.
No, thank you.
It is really great to meet you in person and to have you today as a guest on the show.
Glad to be here. Glad you guys made the long trip.
Yep, it indeed was long, but I'm sure it's all worth it.
Hopefully, we'll see. We'll see in about 30 minutes.
Yeah, we will. Well, Jason, you have had an interesting journey. But before we kind of dive deep into the journey, your experiences, and try to get some nuggets out of this interview from you, it would be great if you could briefly introduce yourself and your company for our viewers.
Sure. Jason Turner, co-founder of ID Lab. ID Lab is a traditional and digital full-service marketing agency. We offer and we provide the best possible service that we can to all of our clients. We are charging full speed in addition to our traditional and digital spaces. The new Web3 and Metaverse, which to some is new, to others it's been around for 5+ years now. And we are very much focused on making sure our clients are well aligned and messaged to the market, which is one of the things that, candidly, I think marketers sometimes will gloss over. We get all excited about the tactics and jumping in and, what's the latest and greatest way to get our clients to market, but some miss the core message. So we very much focus on what is it we're really saying to the market that's special and relevant and of value. And Simon Sinek, I don't know if you've watched his The Why, Sell the Why. We're very focused on the why because it just makes sense. So as an agency, that's our
right. Yeah, I could see that, in the case studies and, while researching about the work you guys, have done. Messaging definitely is so important. But now, obviously, you would also come across clients where, let's say they're not new, they're already there in the game and, now they kind of have approached you and, you're starting to work with them. How does that work there? If you say, okay, fine, the messaging is incorrect, which is the base, how would you then, what is your process like? Do you kind of go back, fix the message, then move forward? What does your process look like?
I've been doing marketing now for 30 years, I guess. I started when I was 5. No, I'm kidding. I did not start when I was 5. And I have been very fortunate in my career. I've worked with some amazing brands and more so amazing people. Not just clients, but inside my agency and the people I get to bring into our family, meaning my agency. And I cut my teeth in probably one of the hardest industries to survive in marketing, which is fast moving goods, or FMG, which is all consumables. Reason is it's a 1% margin business. So if you mess up your marketing or you mess up your product or your distribution or any of the 4 Ps, product, price, place, promotion, going back to college training of marketing, you mess any of those up, you're not profitable. You could lose your profit for the year. Anyway, I then moved into digital, and this was 94-ish, because I saw what was coming with digital, much like what I see what's coming with Web3 and the Metaverse. And so I moved into digital. I ended up building Levi's first e-com instance, and we did this revolutionary thing at the time, which was correlate the catalog, which was their biggest driver of sales,
right,
with their with the digital, with their website. That had never been done. And all it was a code in the catalog that we could put into the website. Yeah. But that garnered all kinds of media and excitement. And that was in Canada, because I'm originally from Canada. And then Levi's US brought us down, and we showed them how to do this. And then I ended up meeting a beautiful woman who is my wife today, and ended up moving down here and working with an agency called Studio Archetype. We were acquired by Sapient. I moved into Sapient, and at Sapient I did Nissan Worldwide. I led the rebuilding of Walmart.com. We did Vitamin Shop, some Audi, the list goes on and on and on. All centered around strategy, branding, marketing, and core business model evolution, because this was the digital evolution, or you could say revolution, when I was doing all this. And then I built a division inside of Sapient that was focused on marketing strategy, etc., branding, and grew that to about 200 million. I left there. It went on. It's now Sapient Razorfish. I don't know what its market cap is anymore. I should know that. And moved into, I actually started a prescription eyewear company, and built that, sold that, and moved back into marketing with Warner Music, where I got to work with some crazy fun artists like the Sinatra family, working with Nancy and Tina and Queensryche and Rihanna and Mel from Spice Girls and Led Zeppelin and the Monkees and the Bee Gees, all these amazing artists.
Sounds fun.
It was great, and they're such good human beings, and they're so interesting. I left that and started my own agency, and that's where we are today, 10 plus years later.
You also are the co-founder at Three Wells, and very typical kind of business model where you are targeting the 50 plus age group, telling them about cannabis. I mean, tell us a little bit more about that, and how did you start that?
Wow, you did your homework. I'm impressed. Yes, co-founder with business partner of Three Wells. Three Wells is focused on cannabis, CBD, etc., basically wellness for the 50 plus. The reason we started that company is pretty simple. I had some severe back issues. I was hit by a drunk driver and crushed a couple of vertebrae. And my co-founder had similar back issues. Okay. So we were or inflicted with incredible amounts of pain for years. That what we discovered was that cannabis could help take the edge off. Cannabis does not take away pain. It helps take the edge off and calm you down, let your muscles relax a bit if you take it properly. If you want to go get stoned, go get stoned. That's not how we used or were introduced to the plant. And when we were trying to figure out for ourselves how to best use it, there was no information anywhere.
Right.
And so we built a company around giving people safe, well thought out information and direction from professionals. So we have an on-staff nurse, we have doctors that are involved, we have plant specialists and horticulturists and botanists and chemists, et cetera, et cetera. And that business is all focused on just bringing joy to people's lives and helping live their best life at 50 plus. Why 50 plus? Because your body fundamentally changes at about 43, 45. And then you start paying the price for all those crazy things you did when you were in your teens. And it's 50 when you really start to feel it. So that's why.
Yeah, I mean, my next question was, do you consider, targeting the younger age as well? Because, cannabis can be, misused, or, even the younger people, should know, the best use of cannabis, and, there's no information out there.
They're already coming, even though we're not targeting. And they're coming for a couple of reasons. So I'll come back to you. I want to start or answer the first portion of the question. And I'm put on our marketing hats here. Need versus want. What is the greatest motivation for consistent, predictable, almost annualized in a way, or recurring revenue, is when you can find and tap into a market that it's a need. They have to have this. When you're younger, it's a want. I want to get stoned and have a little fun. I want to take some CBD to help my body balance. I want to just feel a certain way. But if I have to do without it, I can. So when you're under 40, that's the scenario in the relationship you have with cannabis. When you hit mid-40s and up, all of a sudden it turns into a need. I have knee pain, back pain, insomnia, whatever, eating disorders. Depression, that becomes a need. You need to help supplement your body to rebalance it, and cannabis does that. So when you tap into a human need, your business model becomes much easier, because as long as you provide reliable, trusted, on time, et cetera, things are at ID Lab, we break things up, and I know I'm shifting back to ID Lab for a second, but keeping our marketing hats on. We talk to clients about brilliant basics and magic moments.
Right.
The brilliant basics, have you heard these terms?
No.
No? They're self-evident, but brilliant basics are simply that. If you're offering tires, make sure your tires are round, they grip, if they're snow tires, they perform in the snow, they go the number of miles. All those things are sort of the brilliant basics. Make sure you're nailing those. And then there's the magic moments. And the magic moments are those unexpected things that customers really, when they get them, they're memorable. And they're memorable in a positive way. So when you go in to buy your tires, maybe, you offer them some snacks, or you bring them into the garage and you show them how the tires go on, and you show the construction and why they're going to be safe riding on those tires. And then 2 days later, you call them and say, hey, I know we put the tires on 2 days ago. How are they doing? How are you feeling on your new tires? Because if there are any problems, come back and we'll take care of you. That's a magic moment. That's when you make yourself memorable, right? So similar with three ways. There are brilliant basics that we do, which is good information, and then we do the magic moments. Well, how does that relate to what you just asked me about young versus old? So going back to the need versus want, they just want brilliant basics, right? But we offer the magic moments to those that are older because it has a massive impact on the joy, the comfort of their life. And what's happening, now I'll bring it right back to your question, young versus old, is that younger people are coming onto our site because they're looking for information for the parents and grandparents, right, and then they're discovering the plant for themselves. So we don't need to target them. Sure, it's a bigger audience, but it's not, it's not akin to an annuity revenue like an older audience is. So they're coming anyway, so why spend the marketing on it? And it's not our core target. And if we did that, our differentiator would be gone. And that's a big thing, is your differentiator, because we'll probably get into this, but I'll sort of steal the thunder a bit by saying, I hear so many times people talking about unique selling propositions or USPs, and like an agency, for example, if we got agency owners watching, what's your unique selling proposition? Oh, we have the best creative in the country. No, you don't. Everybody says that. So because everybody says it, even if you did, now you don't. Right. Because a customer's not going to take the time to discern, well, how am I going to measure your creative versus someone else's creative? So my point is that a unique selling proposition has to be ownable and defensible. Those are the two things by which you measure a USP. Can you own it and protect it, either through legal methods or irrefutable claims? And so that's the ownership, and then the defense kind of ties into that as well. Anyways, I'm jumping ahead into our agency discussion. Fire away.
Thank you for explaining that in detail. It kind of, makes more sense. Now, coming back to, starting an agency in, California. You talked about some amazing people you work with, and, a lot of, entrepreneurs who want to start off their own agencies will also be watching, the show. So does the location matter? Starting or being in the Silicon Valley, with the aim of getting certain type of clientele, does the location now after pandemic or even before pandemic, does it really matter, or no?
It matters less and less, and I think it will continue to matter less. There are advantages to California and disadvantages when you're starting an agency. One of the advantages is, even though capital investment is spreading across the world now, and I was just reading Africa has 2.5 times its venture capital investments. I'm using that as sort of an extreme example. So there's money starting to flow globally. But the thing with California is that you still have some of the biggest entities around innovation and around technology are still here. We've had this an exodus, and everybody has to embrace it because it's real, to predominantly Texas. And there's a lot of people that have moved to Texas with that. The thing with California is it's always going to be seen as a very sexy place to be. It's always going to be a technological hub for the world. Granted, the world, from an innovation, and look, I take nothing away from India, Canada, the UK. I'm not saying it's the one and only. It started as the biggest. I mean, you had HP. Hewlett and Packard started their thing literally in a garage, and that's where it started from. So it's embedded in the culture here, which is something to consider. But California is really expensive. Not only from an overhead perspective, but also, and I'm going to remove labor from when I say overhead, but the labor is expensive here too because taxation's high, cost of living's high, etc. So those are things to consider. If I were starting an agency today, I wouldn't be as married to being in California as I was when I started ID Lab.
Right. So, again, coming to this, question of, hiring people and expenses. I understand, California obviously is expensive, but even somebody who is starting up, or even some established agencies now at the stage of expansion. What are your thoughts on outsourcing versus in-house? Should people outsource? Should they think to outsource? If yes, what would be the best way about it?
Yeah, I think trying to do everything in-house now is not the way to go. I think you need to keep your core as to what you want to be great at or think you're great at, and what types of services are in greatest demand with your target client. Keep those things in-house. Keep your creative direction in-house, your strategy, your program management. The leads of those need to be in-house. Because especially program management, and I hate to say this, but some people think that program management isn't sexy. Well, when it takes your margin from 10% to 30%, program management all of a sudden becomes very sexy. And that's the reality, right? Sure, your point of the spear, your salespeople have to sell the deals in the right way and not undercut your margin right out of the gate. But assuming they do that well, the next big thing is your program management solid enough to keep your margins up? So it's a long way to say keep your core functions internal. Don't be shy about outsourcing. Outsourcing is actually a really way to go, a good way to go in many respects. And, generally we like to keep a ratio of in the range of no higher than 50% of our active workforce is outsourced.
Right.
We like to keep it around 30, but we won't let it go higher than 50.
Right. And that's a good number to, as a direction, to give to our audience to kind of plan as well. Now, also, I think, like you said, a lot of agencies or a lot of, startup businesses, focus so much on the salespeople. And, I understand when you're starting off, you want deals to come in, but I think in our industry, in marketing, I think like you said, it's more about that project management or program management, because once a client has come in, to ensure that you're going to get that recurring revenue and to ensure that, let's say, a 10 grand client will tomorrow become a 100K or a 200K client is only going to happen if he's getting that wow moments, like you said, magic moments.
Yeah.
And if actually you're, giving some value add to this business in terms of revenue, in terms of growth, because now, you might, let's say, crack a deal, you have an amazing salesperson, you crack a deal for, let's say, 3 months, 6 months. But if, when the clients come in and they understand that, you're not doing what you had promised, or you don't know what you're doing, you won't, keep that client for long. And I think churn and, recurring revenue is a big part of the marketing, business we are in.
I mostly agree with you. The unfortunate position that any founder or leader of an agency is in is that you have to be good at multiple things at the same time. Your sales engine has to always be firing and always be phenomenal. because your client, your core client, usually a CMO or senior executive, they have a shelf life stamped on their forehead the moment they go into a new job. And it's 18 months. That's the CMO average duration in a company now in the United States. So you know your client's going to churn probably in an 18-month window in most cases, not all cases. So anyone who's going to get up there and say, no, I've been with my client for 3 years, that's great. It happens. All I'm saying is if you have to look at things generally, count on 18 months, which means you have to keep your pipeline full. To your point, yeah, if what you deliver is terrible, then, or it isn't a good experience for the client, your reputation is going to go down, and everything depends on your reputation in this space. And you're not going to grow the account. So you actually have to do those two fundamental things well all the time. You can't give up on either one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it has to go hand in hand. You need to have a proper sales engine. And, like you said, after 18 months, let's say, you were doing good work and maybe, you still keep that client, but that CMO goes somewhere else. He will definitely refer you because, you've done a good job for him.
Yeah, I just got a call from the CMO yesterday. He left, disappeared for a couple months, and hey man, I need you. I said, okay, is this competitive or we pitch? He goes, oh hell no, come on, let's go, we gotta do this. So yes, case in point.
And also, like adding to our, previous discussion about, like being open to outsourcing and, like being sure about what to outsource, what not to outsource. I think it's also, it's also okay to be transparent where, an agency says, hey, what, strategy, all of that thing, is done in-house. I kind of control everything, but then, I have an extended team of specific experts in specific areas, because we just don't do it like that. We have proper experts and stuff like that. Again, it can go both ways. A lot of people want, it works well when they say, okay, fine, they do a white label and, they say that everything is done, let's say in-house, in the US or wherever they are. But I've also seen a lot of cases where the clients even consider that as a positive where, they have a very big setup and they have proper experts. Obviously the strategy and everything is done by them, but they have an extended team, in different parts of the world where, the client even gets confidence to find they're hiring the, people that are best at their job, irrespective of where they are.
Yeah, that's changed a lot, I would say, in the last 4 or 5 years. Because when I was building agencies, built a few of them now, there was a time where clients did not want to hear that you were outsourcing. They were very nervous about that. To your point, though, now they don't care. And we're very transparent with our clients to say, look, here's the in-house team. They are your everyday points of contact. We usually limit it to 1 or 2 just for simplicity for the client. But I will say, hey, these 5 guys or these 5 women or whatever, they are contractors. We are responsible for them. We still maintain that the quality of the product that we deliver to you is of our expectation. It's completely transparent and invisible to you. But we operate at ID Lab, we operate with full disclosure and transparency. Because even if it was an associate analyst, right, which is a very, very junior position, and we didn't tell the client that this associate analyst was contractor, and the client finds out, they're not angry, but they're like, why aren't you comfortable with me? Or why aren't you disclosing everything to me? Now I start to wonder. And you planted, at that moment, you've planted a seed.
Right.
And that seed can grow or not grow. But let's say something else happens. Well, now it's starting to stack up. And you can easily undermine your relationship. So that's why we operate in full transparency with our clients on everything, including our profit. If they ask, it's like, fine, yeah, here's what we're making on this. I hide nothing because I find when I do that, they trust us more.
Right. Also, this question about, as an agency, going niche versus, targeting everybody under the roof. What are your thoughts on that? Is there a right way to go about it?
Yeah, as a founder, stick with your core strengths. And core strengths aren't necessarily what you're best skilled at, which sounds counterintuitive, so let me explain it. It's different for an agency owner and founders than it is for the staff when it comes to this question, because a good agency is passion driven. You don't get into because this game is not for the faint of heart. It is an emotional, financial, legal, everything imaginable roller coaster to build and properly operate an agency. So from a founder's perspective, you have to be passionate about what it is that you're focusing your agency on doing. If you're just highly skilled at it, but you're kind of laissez-faire about the level of passion for whatever it is, then that you're not going to grow the agency very well, because your team will feel the lack of passion, and then they're not motivated and inspired, and that's a big portion of your job every day. So focus on what you're passionate about and skilled at. Put passion slightly ahead of skill. You can learn the skills, but you can't gain the passion because it's more just sort of something that happens inside of you. Tactically, I think is the other place you're going. Being a jack of all trades, like offering every marketing service to anybody that comes in the front door, is not the way to go. You could have gotten away with that years ago, but what I'm finding now is you really need to be, I think the best place to start is vertically focused.
Right.
Because when you're talking to a client and you're using their vernacular and you know a little nuance of information that only the people in the vertical or in that industry know, they immediately trust you much, much more because you understand their business. They don't have to teach you that, well, the distribution system in this vertical doesn't work this way.
Right.
It's slightly different, and here's why. So you have to be vertically focused at first. Then you can broaden your verticals from there.
Right. We initially touched a little bit about brand messaging. You kind of focus a lot on the right messaging. From the work you do. So how does that process look like? I understand somebody, let's say, starting up a new business. Obviously, the first thing they would have to do is get their brand guidelines right, get their core values right, get their brand messaging right. But we also come across businesses where when we start working with them, we realize that there is some problem with the brand messaging. It's not right. So what does your process look like when you work with people like that?
So I'll assume that their brand articulation, strategy, however you want to put it, is in place. I can tell you that 70-80% of the time they say, oh yeah, we've got the brand all figured out, and then we go in and we look at it and it's not. So even though we've been brought in to focus on messaging, we often end up having to tighten up the brand. Non-marketers tend to have very generic statements. We're going to be the best in the world at making tires. Okay, Cooper, Michelin, Vulcan, I think is another. They all say the same thing. So anyway, back to your question. So in developing a message, the first thing that we understand is what is the job to be done, and what job are you being hired to do as that brand. Now, are you familiar with Clay Christensen at all? If you're not, that's fine. Clay Christensen, brilliant marketer. I think he passed away a few years ago, unfortunately. But you should catch, I think it was a TED Talk, but if you Google Clay Christensen milkshake, they did this whole analysis on McDonald's milkshakes. And you can imagine an entity like McDonald's, the amount of research they put into a milkshake, the viscosity, the flavor profile, the color, the size, the temperature, all of that. I mean, they've got that dialed in. And they said to Clay, and I'll bring this back to your point in a second, it's around messaging. Hey, what are we missing that we should know, and how do we sell more milkshakes than we are? We've analyzed everything, and milkshake sales weren't bad, but they were flattening and they wanted to grow. So Clay went out and he did some research, and he took a different approach. Like usually in those situations, the research will be about the product, or how should we position it, or all these typical things, which are still valuable. Don't get me wrong. But what he did is he went in to find out why were they buying milkshakes. Okay, right? It's sort of the essence of it. And what he ended up finding, I'll fast forward, was that, and I couldn't believe this, but it's true because I would not do this personally, but people were buying milkshakes as they were commuting to work in the morning. That was the highest volume sales period. And they were doing that because they needed to be entertained / distracted on the way to work. They were hungry. They didn't want to eat something that would be hard to eat or consume in the car. And they also didn't want to eat something that would be done before they got to work, because now they're bored and they're fidgety, right? They also wanted something that was going to stay in their stomach for a few hours, so they didn't eat something
a little bit, heavier than a coffee.
Yeah, exactly. And they wanted something to stay in their stomach for a couple hours after they got to work, because they didn't want to have to eat in the car and then eat again as soon as they got to the office, right? So the job to be done was simply that, entertain me, distract me, make me feel full on my way to work, not give me a sweet treat, which is what we all sort of equate with milkshake. So bringing all that back, that was a long way to get to the answer to your question. We start with what is the job to be done, because then we understand the cognitive and emotional state of the audience.
Absolutely.
Then we can look for the triggers. Like, what are those emotional triggers? What things do they need to hear? And then we can start to shape the words around that. And we use professional writers. Like, one of my writers actually, he still does, I should know this, writes for Marvel Comics. And so these are real writers, and great writers are really hard to find. But a great writer can find a word or sequence of words that guys like me can't.
And it connects with the right audience.
So we hit that emotional trigger, and that's where your messaging starts. It's the emotional trigger. Where too many marketers go is speeds, features, and functions. You have to start with the why and the emotion, and then we start to build the message around that. And then we limit our clients to, you only get 3.
Okay.
And they have to be in sequence. You get 3 message points, and you have to tell, and we'll go through it with them. There's a whole exercise that we go through. We have workshops, depending on the scale. We do a full workshop around messaging, or we do it sort of in a very smaller way. But we come forward with, okay, here's what we think are the top 3. And here's the primary, secondary, and tertiary in that order. And then we work with the client to make sure that they're on board with it. And then we move through the messaging. We create a whole message platform for them. And we make them stick to that messaging. So when they put on their homepage 50 different messages, we immediately admonish them and say, no, you have to pick the first, and then you can support the next 2 on that page. But oddly, the next big thing that a lot of agencies don't do is actually sell the message platform internally with the client.
Right.
What ends up happening often is the message is given to the marketing, maybe corporate communications, maybe the product leaders, and then that's it. And then you have your executive team out in the marketplace talking about something completely different. And so we get the executive team and all of the leads that have, CSR, customer service reps, anyone who has to communicate with the customer at any one point, they get brought into that whole messaging development and execution, because that message has to be supported and broadcast every day at every moment for it to sink in. And that's what feature positioning, and that's what feature unique selling propositions.
Right. And also, once you have kind of, got the messaging right, there's also this question of, like, what is the best way to, promote it to your target audience? There are so many channels out there.
Yeah.
Of course, you should see where your audience are more active and kind of choose those platforms. But is there any particular process or way you kind of look about it?
Yeah, we use AI tools to help initially get where are they, what are they talking about, and then we experiment quickly and we distill down from there. Like search is probably one of the best, easiest examples, and we just went through this with a client where they assumed that they needed to be in conferences and, send out all these brochures and, their salespeople, et cetera. And we said, well, because they're business to business. And we said, look, you've got a brand with low awareness, no equity, except with your current customer base. So you've got to find a way to get your brand message out before we start talking about what makes you special. They don't even know you to call you. They don't know you exist. So in that scenario, we said, look, we have to draft on other brands that are known and bigger. So the easiest natural thing to do is conquesting in search. So we put a big conquest campaign together, which worked incredibly well. Then we can start building from there. Now, that doesn't answer your question, because I can't answer your question, because the brand situation is the thing that will really guide us. And on top of that, where they want to go with the business, and then where they're at with the business. Because the one thing I haven't said that's really important is, at the beginning of anything, branding, messaging, tactical planning around execution, we do an exercise with the client that strips them naked. And I mean that figuratively, not literally. Meaning, what often happens with clients is they drink their own Kool-Aid. And that's normal, and they should. They should be drinking their own Kool-Aid because they have to be passionate about what they do. But we don't have to when we step in. What we have to do is play the market for them.
Right.
You may think you're the best, producer of blue paint on the planet, but actually everyone thinks Sherwin-Williams is ahead of you, and Kelly Moore, and so let's face the realities, because when we face the realities, we know the emotional and cognitive state of the customer, and then we can talk internally about how to get you to a point where you are perceived to be the best blue paint in the market. But we have to strip away reduce the Kool-Aid effect with our clients, and then we can get into the honest positions to where we are, and then the honest tactics that we have to go through in order to get to where they want to be, like the conquesting campaign. They thought they were well known. They thought that, everybody loved them. And we proved to them that wasn't the case. And they had to embrace that. And when they embrace it, now we can all move forward in the right tactical, strategic ways.
Right. Well, initially, we talked about, Meta and Web3 being the future. What do companies or businesses need to do or know to be prepared for that future?
They need to do the same thing they did in 1995, believe it or not. So look, I'm so glad you brought this up, because it's now a core focus of ID Lab and a personal interest of mine, because I love these situations where our lives will fundamentally change. And that's not hyperbole. That's the reality of Web3 and Meta. So what companies need to do is not get enamored and enchanted by the shiny object, which is the metaverse and Web3. And I correlate that back to 1995, because at that point, what companies did, there's one thing that companies have to do now that's related to 1995, and one thing they better not do that's also related to 95. So the thing that they should be doing now is they should be stopping and doing the fundamentals. And the fundamentals are, should we be doing this, yes or no? No. If the answer is no, what are the implications? If the answer is yes, all right, why? Why should we go do this? How are we going to measure the success? What are our expectations of Web3, the metaverse? What is our competition? All the fundamentals have to be answered first. And at ID Lab, we've shaped an entire workshop that can be 4 hours to 4 days, where we get at the answers to these questions. Then when you have that, when you've figured out all of those fundamentals, then you can decide, because it will help you answer, do we need to be in the metaverse? Do we need to shift to a blockchain? If we're going to do either one of those things, how do we do that? Those are the answers you need, because it is such a fundamental shift. This isn't like putting up brochureware on the web. This has much deeper implications to your business, your relationships with your customers, and the pressure and the capital-intensive needs that it will put on the business. So you got to start there. And when I say that, I'm sure people in the audience think, "Oh, yeah, that's just the fundamentals." You'll be shocked how many companies and even agencies don't start there. They start with, "Well, how are we going to 3D model an avatar?"
Yeah.
Wrong place to start.
Right.
Was there more to your question, or did
Yep, we did. We did.
I answered it? Okay.
Well, I know we're short on time, but before we end the episode, I like playing a quick rapid fire round
Okay.
of 3 to 5 questions.
All right.
So you ready?
I get to ask you the questions?
You can ask me as well.
I was kidding.
We can do that as well. I'll ask you 3 to 5, and you can ask me as well.
All right.
I don't mind doing that.
All right. You start.
All right, ready?
Yep.
If a movie was made on on you, what genre would it be?
Oh my God. Pure comedy.
Are you a morning person or a night person?
Absolutely a morning person. I'm up at 5 in the morning and I'm going.
Tea or coffee?
The mint tea. Definitely not coffee. Never had a cup of coffee in my life.
Oh, never?
No.
Not even tasted it?
I've tasted it.
Okay.
Yeah. Didn't like it. Love the smell. Will not drink it.
All right. Favorite superhero?
Favorite superhero? I think I'm a Superman.
Do you read books? I can see a lot of books here.
No, man, that's all for show, and that's my wife.
Oh, okay.
I do not read. It's one of the things as an agency owner. No is the answer to your question because I know this is a rapid round.
But you can explain as well. No problem.
Well, one of the big things as a founder of anything, doesn't matter if it's an agency, you have to understand yourself.
Right.
And know your strengths and weaknesses. And I'm painfully aware of all of that. You also have to understand how you learn. Because if I don't learn by reading, it bores the hell out of me. And I fall asleep. I learn tactically and I learn visually. And then third to that, I learn through sound, audibly. So that's why I don't read, because I don't retain. But if you put a video or an object in front of me, I'll retain everything.
So you see a lot of videos.
Well, I'm constantly watching video, yeah.
What was your last Google search, if you remember? This is the last one.
What is Aura?
Okay.
Because Aura in Web3, because we're so focused on Web3 and the metaverse, Aura is this new luxury brand consortium to validate digital authenticity of NFTs and other digital properties that the luxury brands are creating, which I thought was brilliant. I heard about it, didn't know the details, so I searched it.
Well, Jason, thank you so much for your time.
It was a pleasure.
Wonderful talking to you today.
Thank you, Dawood. I appreciate you coming.